So that's perfect. Okay, perfect. We're live.
We're live. How exciting.
It is, yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you and welcome to Her Stories Untold Live Talks with Traei. My name is Traei. I am the founder and author of Her Stories Untold. This is a global book project sharing different empowering and uplifting stories of women around the globe from all walks of life. The reason that this project was created was because I realized there are so many women out there that have stories to share, journeys that have been taken, but not realizing their significance and importance. This project is open to all women and transgender women in the globe. If you have a story of your journey of how you came to be, whom, and where you are today, please do check out www.herstoriesuntold.com. This global book project aims to empower, uplift, and inspire other women. Now, before we begin our talk today, I want to acknowledge that the land on which I live and work is the traditional and unceded territory of the Coquitlam Nation and lies within the shared traditional territories of Tsleil-Waututh, Katia, Musqueam, Squamish, Kikit, Stolo, and First Nations. So thank you very much. Very importantly, I want to warmly welcome everyone joining us here today and our very special guest, Heather C. Markham. Welcome, Heather.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you here with us today. I'm very, very, very excited about our talk. So how are you today?
I am awesome. Thank you, because it's air conditioned inside. It's a nice and cool 74 in my house while it's 109 outside because I live in Phoenix.
That seems very hot. Probably not as we're not as hot for sure. I'm based here in Vancouver, BC. So yeah, cannot complain. So no, that's great to hear. So yeah, I wanted to welcome you because I had the opportunity to read your book, Rough Waters. It's a very fantastic book, and I say this genuinely and sincerely because it's been quite an adventure for each of the chapters, going through them. Yeah, so tell us, Heather, please introduce yourself.
Thanks. I'm Heather Markham, Chief Creative Officer and owner of Making Waves for Good. It's my umbrella company that covers publishing, fine art photography, ADA usability, which is different than just ADA compliance,
Okay.
and the We Decide movement. I live in a retirement community and decided I didn't want to be just another gray-haired little old lady. I'm not really retired. And so I have purple hair, which makes me super happy. I grew up in a nomadic family, Air Force, military. We moved around a lot, but I was clumsy. Mom's clumsy girl, falling down all the time. And that could be, the moving around could be why we didn't figure out what was going on earlier, because there was no continuity of care, which is a fascinating concept to explore. I'm a multi-hyphenate. I don't want to run my CV for you because it's embarrassing.
Oh, not at
But
all.
I wandered around the country for a lot of years, and I now live in Arizona with my super snuggly Maine coon cat, who may or may not make an appearance. She, the last time I did one of these, she came in and laid on the light controls, and we lost all of the light on the side of my face. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, no, I'd be excited and delighted to see your cat. If she, right? She
Yep.
pop in, so totally welcome. Everything's
Thanks.
peaceable, so all good there. So yeah, I wanted to learn more about your journey as to how you've become whom you are today. It's a very vulnerable and empowering journey. And I kind of wanted, if you could share with us how it's been unfolding for you since, I guess, your early 30s, right? When things have changed, right? And maybe tell us a little bit about what it is. Yeah.
Sure. So I was actually symptomatic as early as 1990, and I was in college. I hurt my back, and everything started kind of going haywire. I had a lot of pain. I had problems walking. And so I kept seeing doctors and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. It took 12 years for me to get a diagnosis of a limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. And at the time, I mean, I should have been clued in. The doctor that I saw the very first time was at the muscular dystrophy clinic. I was like, that should have been a great big clue. Wasn't a clue. I didn't catch that. And he said, it's just, we don't really define it any further than that. You don't have ALS, you don't have Becker, you don't have Duchenne. We don't know what it is. Kind of good luck. And I was like, ooh, that was tough.
So it was quite a confusing period. And, while I'm not a medical expert, I did catch, on the websites of the muscular dystrophy. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Limb-girdle muscle dystrophy, right? On their website, they kind of go in to define what that is. And maybe I'll just share their definition with the audience so that
Sure.
have a bit of a concept of what that is, right? So on their website, they said that this LGMD is a diverse group of disorders with many subtypes categorized by a disease, gene, and inheritance. LGMD usually manifests in the proximal muscles around the hips and the shoulders. So the proximal muscles are those closest to the center of the body. Distal muscles are the one farther away from the center, for example, in the hands and the feet. And they say that the shoulder girdle is the bone structure that surrounds the shoulder area, and the pelvic girdle is the bony structure surrounding the hips. So collectively, these parts are called the limb girdles, and it is the observed weakness and atrophy wasting of the muscles connected to the limb girdles that has given this group of disorders its name. So basically, the group of disorders that constitute LGMD is the fourth most common genetic cause of muscle weakness, with an estimated prevalence in about 2 in every 100,000 individuals. So that's kind of their definition for it. Sorry, to interrupt. Just wanted to quickly share in case people aren't really familiar what that is. And
I'm glad that you did, because having the full definition helps people have a better understanding. It was years before I got a subtype. And so I actually have a recessive inheritance, and it was the second one found. So it's called 2B, although they've recategorized it as R2. Okay. And my particular flavor, if you want, is called dysphalanopathy. And that big long word is just the definition that when you tear a muscle, okay, and if you're going to build a muscle, you have to tear it. That's how. Okay, I'm just going to presume that you know that, because all over the bodybuilding ads. When I tear a muscle, I don't make the protein that repairs that.
My apologies. There's a fire truck going on at the background. It's kind of blurring, but I heard everything that you said. You said that it's kind of like when bodybuilders, they to go into that details for the audience too, is basically when the muscles break, like they kind of train, overexert, right? And then the muscle itself will naturally start repairing and building upon it, right? Whereas for in the case of what you're experiencing is that it won't repair itself.
It doesn't repair. And so every time I overexert and a muscle gets torn, it stays torn. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the challenge of that is that there become fewer and fewer muscles involved over time. One of my friends who I've known for 8 years said at about year 4, she's like, you look a lot weaker than you were when I met you. And I said, well, I think there are just less muscles playing. Hey, Traei, you want to play a game with me? You want to touch your nose? We'll touch our noses at the same time.
Okay.
So people can see what that looks like, right? Because your arms work, and your audience can't tell that I'm a power wheelchair user just on a Zoom call.
We cannot tell. Absolutely.
Okay. So, ready?
Okay, on the count of.
Yeah, on the count of 3.
Okay.
Okay.
1.
You count it.
1, 2, 3.
Ta-da. Okay. So what's happening is I have a lot of swaying. I have to support arms because there's no just pickup. And so it makes little things challenging. I have to brace my elbows somewhere to brush my teeth. And I have a really long handled hairbrush, and just basic stuff takes a lot longer, is more challenging. The whole getting out of bed thing, like most people are like, oh, I'm going to get out of bed. And they roll over and they sit up and they put their feet on the floor and off they go. And I'm 7 minutes. It takes me 7 actual minutes to sit up my adjustable bed, use my lift, call it over, get connected in, get picked up, and then put on my power wheelchair, take the lift strap out and get the lift away from me. 7 minutes, which is why I don't have a dog anymore. Okay. Because people are like, oh, you had a service dog, you should have another one. Spoiler alert, Trace. Spoiler alert, Trae. There's a dog.
Yeah, I did read about Sophie. Yeah, they're so popular, right?
Sopapilla,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, sorry, poor chicken scratch handwriting. But
No, she's from the Mexican food litter. The kindergartners got to name the litter that year.
okay. Yeah, very
So
cute.
people are like, well, you had a service dog, you should have another service dog. I'm like, dogs have emergencies in the middle of the night sometimes. And 7 minutes, like that's too long for a dog to wait who's having a nighttime emergency. So I live alone, and now I have a cat. Works out great.
Cat is definitely much easier to train. In the subject of dogs, I've always had dogs like for many years myself. I trained one bigger dog. She was 25 pounds to do her business in an under bed storage litter box. So I custom built a litter box for that, but that takes also a lot of work to set up, right? And you still have to go in to change it. But yeah, but I 100% get you.
Right.
There's certain emergency that can come up, and it's just not an ideal like situation, right?
Right.
So to get to, you mentioned that the movement is it's basically you shifting from the hips, I guess, and then pushing
Yep.
up to support those movements. I know when I was reading your book, I thought this was really empowering, and thank you very much for writing and sharing this too. You talked about getting coffee. There was that chapter where you're like, you were very determined that despite that you couldn't really get up and just walk up to get the coffee, but you needed that coffee to start your day. You're like, I'm going to do this myself, right? So I thought yeah, yeah. Is
So it was a very specific event, and I was still walking at the time, and I was climbing in. The coffee was upstairs. That was really the problem, is that the coffee was on the second floor of this conference center. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go get coffee. How am I going to do that? And then I worked out all of the energy that it would take to walk up the stairs, because it wasn't just like beep, 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 up the stairs you go. It's plant the right foot, push, bring the left foot up. Okay. And then I was like, well, that's going to take a lot of energy. Maybe I'll just crawl up the stairs. And you have to really have your ego out of the way in order to crawl somewhere. But there was coffee. So I ended up not having to resort to either one of those things. Someone came and said, hey, I'm going to go get coffee. I'll just get yours too. And boop, up she went, and boop, back down. And it took her no time at all. It would have probably taken me more than 20 minutes round trip and half my day's energy. So
yeah, that's no, thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, I just thought that was such a powerful moment. And I think you were mentioning earlier that of course before you were walking, you were doing your daily living, and then not knowing what this was for like a very, very long time, many, many, many years, different doctors, different specialists telling you all the wrong diagnoses and then prescribing, something that wasn't for this particular situation, right? Issue. And then just going it from it was would you say it was a slow deterioration or like kind of how it progressed? Yeah.
So it's very slow. The first doctor I saw who gave me a diagnosis of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy said, it's slow. And I was thinking, doesn't feel slow. Like it just feels like, because time compresses in our memories,
Right.
right? But the reality is it's been slow. It was from the time that I became symptomatic in 1990, I didn't start using a wheelchair until 2007. So that's 17 years. So that's pretty slow. And that was my first power chair. I didn't have any, I had a scooter at work because it was a quarter of a mile from the parking lot to my desk. And I asked work for that accommodation and they granted me the accommodation. And if you have a disability, whether it's visible or invisible, you can be granted an accommodation. You just have to have a doctor's note and go speak to your HR department. You say, I need this accommodation. And it can be, you might not have to go all the way to HR. You ought to be able to just work it out with your boss. And I just worked it out with my boss.
So kind of
And he
having
said,
truthful, open conversations directly to talk
yeah,
about what
you
is it that you
need
need.
to it, and in the United States, it's very much a matter of the law. I mean, it's part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So
Yeah. In Canada, I believe, yeah, there is that too as well. Um, Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to ask you, what made you feel the most like vulnerable, most empowering, in the part of your journey? Because there was a chapter that you were talking about the cloak of invisibility, right? And it was something that was like growing into it, right? So if that makes sense, yeah. So we can share a little bit about that.
absolutely. So the very first draft of this book didn't have a lot of the emotional disclosure. It didn't have a lot of the self-talk, didn't have a lot of the details about the depths of relationships. But this book does.
Yeah.
And it very much, I was just like, I cannot believe I'm telling people this. It's a memoir and it's like, oh, are you really telling people that? I'm like, yes, you're really telling people that. But the cloak of invisibility was kind of interesting because with a wheelchair, I kind of became less invisible. It was, you just kind of used to blending into the crowd, right? When you want, Traei, you can just blend into the crowd, right? But I have a 468-pound wheelchair. There's no blending. So I just am there. And the cloak of invisibility really got ripped away when I was at Cedar Point amusement park. And the whole ride had to be held up while I got seated. And it's really kind of challenging because you go, oh, everybody's stopping and watching. Everybody. Maybe not everybody in the park, right? But the 50 people waiting to get on that ride are waiting for you. And that day, it was kind of a jump up and back, like a bicycle seat, right? And I just had no jump left. My legs didn't do that anymore. And I'd taken a really strong friend with me. So if you want to go to amusement parks and you have a disability, you should take a really strong friend. That's my tip. And He literally stood in front of me and he put his hands in my armpits like I was an 8-year-old child and went, whoop, and just picked me up on the seat. And, you know, he just put me there. And I literally heard the whole line go, whoa, you are absolutely no longer invisible. And you are now a rolling role model. You better figure out that everybody is going to see you, even if they're not really paying attention. And that's tough, really tough.
I can only imagine. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's something that you continue to hone and build upon, right? Because I'm going to talk about, there was a chapter where this is a vulnerable moment, which I thought was very empowering, inspiring, was that there was a moment of change. I think it was before like the wheelchair and the cane, and I think you were just starting out to feel all these symptoms and going to see the doctors, and you went to lunch with her friend, and she was listening to your story about going to the bathroom. Like literally that chapter was like, you know how you watch a movie and because you're so interested and you want to know what's going on and you're following it so closely that you almost pretty much forgot to blink. So that was what happened in that particular chapter, because I was mapping out in the depths of details that you shared and wrote of going to the bathroom and getting up and stuff like that. And you were sharing that with your friend about how you we couldn't, you know, as a girl, you don't just go to the bathroom, take off, you know, go do your business, put your pants back up and just exit and wash your hands, and then out you go, right? So it was so challenging. And then the fact that there was no one there to help you, and then coming out and then feeling, I would say like, you know, rock bottom, right? But then hearing your friend saying that thing that empowered you to keep going. Yeah, if you wanted to, if it's okay to share a little bit about that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that story is a very funny thing because I had figured out how to get up using an ADA wheelchair stall because they all have grab bars in the corners. And I would put my hands behind myself and kind of push. And it was a really weird looking thing. But the stall was busy and I was in a hurry and didn't want to have an accident. So I went into a stall that was very narrow with grab bars on either side and thought, well, I had to be able to get up from here. Didn't have an accident, yay me. But I couldn't get up. And then I was like, oh, this is not good. What am I going to do? And so I was like, well, you're alone. You're tired. So now your legs are done. And I actually managed to get on the bathroom floor, which was not great because now I'm on the bathroom floor in a public bathroom. Ew. Got my pants up and then was like, okay, well, now I still can't get up. I ended up scooting on my backside, my legs straight out in front of me and pushing all the way to the door to get out, and got outside of the big women's restroom and found two guys to pick me up and walk me off. And it's embarrassing to be on a bathroom floor. It's humbling to have to ask someone to come to pick you up. I think they were pretty shocked that I just walked off because I wasn't injured. I just was stuck. You know, Teresa helped me a bunch, my friend.
Yes.
She listened to all my stories. And I was really struggling because the medication that they had put me on was causing me to tremor. Okay. And I don't mean like, oh, you know, I've got like a little bit of shake. Okay. I'm going to try and put my hand back in camera view and see how we do. Okay. So it wasn't like, I don't know if you can see that, you know, it wasn't like a little bit. It was like all of me was doing this. And that's really tiring. And, you know, and it would travel. It would start in my head and work down my body. And so I'd just be sitting around shaking. And it was a side effect from a medication. And the doctor had said, oh, you know, maybe we'll just increase the medication. And honestly, my first thought was, I'll kill myself first. I can't do this. I just can't do this. And that's a really hard place to get to. And I'd been living with that for weeks and having terrible thoughts. And my friend said to me, look at all the calories you're burning. I was like, what? She's like, look at all the calories you're burning. And that laughter, she saved my life. And I finally got to tell her about it years later. So what I really want to share about that is, if you're struggling, let your friends help you. If they help you through this massive breakthrough moment, tell them about it. They need to know. And when I finally got to tell her years later that she had literally saved my life in that moment, she said, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I'm so glad. She's like, I just say those weird things and I never know if they're good or not. I didn't know how that made you feel. And I'm like, it was fantastic. And so
Teresa and you sound like amazing friends.
yeah, I have amazing friends. I really do.
You're amazing too. You're right about communicating what you need. I think at times, no matter what a person is going through, sometimes there's challenge and difficulty in terms of expressing what it is that you need. And I think as friends, sometimes we can also reach out to say, to help and offer support to as well. So, and I think it's not just a one-off thing for each instance that comes up. It's more like an ongoing training without realization. So just hanging out with their friends, all the interactions with Teresa, for example, like she's also learning, right? But I think you're right. Like we should be sharing that time you said this. It really changed the way how I saw things or how I wanted to proceed next, right? So I thought it was really empowering. So that's why I kind of, asked you about this particular chapter, right? Just going through it. And I find it so courageous that, you captured not just a glimpse, but a very complex and in-depth description of what you were going through in that moment. And I followed you. Yeah. I felt like I experienced or tried my best to experience what you were going through. So that part itself was very empowering. And I think, yeah, so that's why I stopped to ask you that. And thank you for sharing that, the importance of telling that person or the people that have inspired or helped us along the way, no matter how long time has passed, just to have that message out to let them know that that's how much impact they had.
Yes, thank you.
No, so thank you for sharing that. And now kind of going back to the questions is, what I wanted to know was that, I mean, this journey has been very long and still continues, right? As everybody's life, of course, as is unfolding. Was there any particular moment, that in your life where you suddenly decide that, hey, you know what, I'm gonna write this book and I want to share this publicly?
And my friends for a long time had been saying, you should write it. You should write your story. Like you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not going to do that. Who'd be interested? And they're like, everyone would be interested. I'm like, no. And they're like, I just think you should. Well, in February of 2017, on Valentine's Day, by myself, I sat and I wrote the first chapter. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was the first chapter to a different book, but still I wrote down what I thought was going to be the first chapter. And it just looked like blitzed out 4 pages. So not a small amount. I mean, for the writers out there, 1,500 words, it just like went. And I sent it off to 2 people I really trusted. And I said, I need a go, no go. Okay. Don't edit it. Don't redline it. I don't want any input or feedback, except, yes, this is a story worth hearing about, or no, I've lost, I've just wasted an hour of my time, right? Or whatever it is. And they both said, go, like, finish it, like, right now. This is an important story. We want to hear more. And so I wrote 300 pages over the next 3.5 months.
Wow. So you just wrote like mad.
Just wrote like mad. It was kind of a compulsion. Like, I just kind of at some point felt like it was being downloaded through me. Not quite. But that was those were stories. I was just kind of storytelling about different events without really feeling the feels. And I worked with someone for a few years on that. And only last year, in April of last year, I took my book back from that person and said, we're going nowhere. I need to get my story out there. And ended up breaking that relationship with her, which was really hard. And there'd been a large financial output. I was like, okay, sometimes you just have to do the really hard, really scary thing, right? And walk away, no matter the cost. So I took it to Girl Friday and they said, oh, there's a story here, baby, but it's going to need work. So there was a lot of work that I put in and months of rewriting, and the great developmental editor named Gail. And she's like, okay, well, what were you feeling and what were you thinking? And why is the story important? And so she really helped me hone it into the book that it is now, with a lot more depth and a lot more feeling. I will say that I was going through EMDR therapy at the time for trauma. And so the whole book was just one big cathartic thing, but going through those things at the same time was really tough. Like, going through trauma therapy is hard enough, and then trying to write a memoir at the same time.
That's very intense. Like, literally attending trauma therapy. So I'm just going to rephrase this. And then finding writing as a therapeutic kind of output, as well as, your intentions of wanting to write a book kind of thing, right? And it was happening simultaneously, right? So
right, without trying to do the therapy that I was going through, right? Because I wasn't journal writing after therapy in my memoir. Right? This was a wholly different. And she said, I don't even want you writing about our sessions afterwards. She's like, if you're going to write, go work on your book. So completely different things. But there was a lot of time when I was like, this is just so emotionally intense and overwhelming that I would go lay in bed and cry for an hour. But it's out and my story's out, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I'm very excited because I think a lot of people should definitely read this book. And it's not just for girls or women. I think anybody can read this book. And I say this sincerely because I was reading your book, and yeah, like, I think the way you got into the details of describing what you were going through really gave the reader a chance to feel your thoughts and understand where and what, where you're coming from, and what is it that you're doing in that precise moment, right? So I think it's just really important. And I think I wanted to ask you, like, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be? And maybe this question, it doesn't have to be so general, or it can be as general as you want, but essentially, like, I think there's different phases of our younger self, right? Like, when you're a child, a teenager, young adult, somebody in your 30s, right? And then you have the moment where you're learning that things are changing, and then as it unfolds, yeah. So if you could share a bit about that.
Sure. So if I were going to speak to that young woman at any stage in her life,
Okay.
the very first thing that I would tell her is, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to have a lot of stuff that you have to deal with. And yeah, you're dealing with stuff right now, and it's big and it's important to you, and it's important. And in my 20s, when I was symptomatic but not diagnosed, what I'd say to her is, you're right. Something's wrong. You're not crazy.
At the time,
doesn't, because the doctors were telling me that I was crazy. I had 12 years where doctors were saying, there's nothing wrong with you. But I knew something was. I knew my body. I'd been an athlete. I knew something was off. And so I would say to that young woman in her 20s, yeah, you're going to be okay. Life is not going to turn out like you expected it to be, but that's okay too. It's a journey, and you don't ever know what you're going to find, but hang on, girl. Hang on. It's going to be one wild ride.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I wanted to ask you too about, we're on the subject of writing, and would you say that it has a tremendous impact in terms of your healing and transformation journey, like versus when you haven't written down anything?
So I think writing is a really great way to understand all of the things that are swirling around in your brain. Okay? Because there's a lot of stuff swirling around in your brain all the time. And I've done a lot of journaling in the past. And journaling helps me go back and look at stuff. And so then I'm like, oh, wow, this thing that I thought was ginormous and taking up my entire field of view was just because I was standing too close to that tree. Right? It wasn't the whole forest. Right? Or, hey, you have patterns in your life. When you go back and you kind of skim through journals over years, you're like, I've been handling this particular thing or reacting to this particular thing in this way for a really long time. And then it's the next time it comes up, am I going to choose to react to it in the same way, or am I going to make a different choice? Because we know how it turned out last time and all of the 15 times before. What about now? What about the next time you encounter that? The next time that you let your feelings get hurt because you misinterpreted a text message? What are you going to do about that? Are you going to sit in your hurt feelings? Or are you going to reach out to the person who sent the message and say, hey, I let my feelings get hurt. And I want to be really intentional with my language there, right? I don't say to people anymore, you hurt my feelings. Okay. What I say is, I let my feelings get hurt because I choose the feeling. Okay. And I choose my reaction. And I said to that person, who's now my fiance, and I said to him, this is how I heard this.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's not what I meant. What I meant was, I didn't mean that you shouldn't have replied to this email with this other person that we're having this 3-person conversation with. What I meant was, yes, I'm also guilty of texting without my glasses. Okay, those are completely different things.
Yeah, no, and should you have not, see, this is what I love about you and your book, of course, is there's a great sense of humor. Okay. And I think, without realization that it's constantly always there. And I think perhaps that's also a part of, how you continue to choose empowerment positivity as you're sharing and capturing right here, right? So like the text message example is how you choose to feel. Do you choose to sit in your discomfort, you know, which one we can do, of course, to acknowledge what we are feeling, because that's the truthful state of being, right? And
Right.
then the next step is like, okay, after you acknowledge that, it's like, what are you going to do about it? Either you forget about it, you hold on to a resentment, let it grow, right? Should imagine that grows, right? It's not a fiance anymore. But the fact that you you reached out and you asked him, and it was like, oh, glasses. Oh, you meant that other person. Oh, it was just the email, right? It
Right.
really changes life in a different pathway. It's like a train ride. You went another train ride.
You choose, you get to that thing. And I really could have sat around and being hurt and resentful. And instead I said, and we live an hour apart. And so, I'm like, I need to see your face. We need to have a video call because I need to kind of work this out. Anyway, and so I told him what was going on and we had this conversation. He said, the fact that you wanted to call and work this out right away shows me how much you love me and how much you want to not sit in your resentment, how much you really want to understand what it was that I was trying to say to you. When he said first principle is love. Start with love. If you think something's going wrong, go back to love. What's going on here? So we're still working it out, but everyone's working it out. It's just a matter of choosing. And so, and thank you for thinking I'm funny. I've had people in my life who are like, you're not funny. And I'm like, yes, what I'm
No,
talking about.
you're funny. I see humor everywhere. I caught a glimpse of it. I saw it in your writing, and even in your most vulnerable moments that you have shared and captured in your book, I felt like there was humor that kind of pulled you through, right? And that's what kind of gave
Thank
you
you.
hope to like, see things differently. Like the fact that you even referenced the dog is named by these little kids. There's a bit of humor, right? What Teresa said to you about burning the calories, that's humor right there, right? And then the fact that you're describing, the friend that helps you get the coffee so quickly and zipped you back, and or someone that picked you up and you started walking, like it's not humor as in, I just felt like it's empowering because it's natural, it's organic, it's sincere, and it's very hopeful. I think that's
Thank you.
what's so important about that part, right? So, and I love how you shared about how this whole writing process have shaped and help you progress with the healing and the transformation, and how really the fact that when one chooses to stay empowered and stay positive, it's a choice that you make, right? It's a very fine line, but once you make it, you're like on a total different pathway, right? So, and then I love the fact that you shared with us about communication with your fiance. I feel like that's a big challenge for human beings around the globe, about revolving around communication. We're all not masters of communicators, and then we're not masters of listeners, but we're continuously working on that throughout life. And it cannot just be reliant on one person. It requires both parties or groups of people to have an open conversation. Yeah. There's no way to control what a human being may be feeling emotionally, but definitely working through that and then having the courage and the hope to continue this conversation, coming back to love, as you said earlier. Yeah. So
Thank
love.
you. Well, I have a new policy in my life that I adopted about 6 months ago. Actually,
Yeah.
I've probably had it a lot longer than that. It's called a no mind reading policy. So don't pretend, if we can just agree that I'm not going to be able to read your mind and you're
100%.
not going to be able to read my mind, then I'm not going to take for granted that I know what you're thinking or feeling about any specific thing. And if I ask you for help in something simple as you say, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? I'll be like, yeah, sure. Can you get me some yogurt? How much do you know specifically about what I want specifically at that point?
Not too much, because the next question I would want to ask you is, what kind of yogurt, their diet specimen requirements or restrictions or allergies, right? And yeah.
Right. So, in the old days when we didn't think to ask those questions,
Yeah.
right? And you say, okay, and you just go to the store, then you end up standing in front of the refrigerator case going, there are a lot of choices here. What size did she want? What flavor did she want? Was there a brand? Did she want Greek yogurt? What does she want? But and then I should be happy with whatever you come back that's labeled yogurt. But I'm probably not going to be, because I knew in my own brain what I meant. Right. So I've stressed you out in the process, and I've stressed myself out because now I should be happy with whatever you brought me. Okay.
Yeah.
That was labeled yogurt.
Yeah.
Okay. But if instead you say, hey, I'm going to the store, do you need anything? And I say, yeah, I'd like a yogurt, and I'd like it vanilla, and I'd like it fat-free, and I'd like it in this brand, and I'd like a single serving, and I'd like exactly one of them. Then I've fully communicated all of that information. It takes all the stress off of you, because now then you're not required to read my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then my next question is, what's the backup?
Right, exactly. What's the backup?
Because now I know what to ask.
And then you say, right. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'd like this flavor instead, and so then it takes all the stress off of both parties if you can find a way to be really, really, really super clear about your needs.
I think that's so important. I think sometimes even if a person knows someone for a very long time, the communication can also fall off the pathway, right? And things get busy. I'm a fault sometimes, very not clear because just time, you're quickly sending a message, right? Typing it fast, and things can fall off the track. But I think just the very importance of clarifying and following up, right? That part is also very important. Yeah, no, I thank you for sharing about that. There was a chapter, so this is kind of in line of, pushing through fear and then having courage to do and continue life no matter where you are, what circumstances, and if you want to share a couple of experience. I did want to note to say that there was a chapter about surfing, and I thought I've never gone surfing myself, but yeah, if you want to, I don't know, also share a little bit about that, because that's very inspiring. Yeah. Another
Sure.
Yeah.
So I grew up around, my grandparents had a house on Cape Cod. And so I would grow up on the summers going to being in the water. And I love the ocean. I don't have any fear of sharks. I'm not afraid of stuff for new adventures. There's a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear for me around, what is my body doing? Right? What does the prognosis look like? Right? And that can be really fearful, because no one can tell me exactly what my body's going to be doing or not doing in 5 years, because everybody's a little bit different. So you just have to say, okay, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to figure that out. As far as surfing, I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie.
I guess I detected that a bit.
In fact, skydiving is on my list.
Wow.
Why not? But and so the very first time I got into a big wave, there was this thump that happened. So it's really kind of hard to describe. I surf laying down. Let me start there. I surf laying down on my stomach. I can't move.
Okay. Yeah.
On my stomach. Okay. I am unable to move at all once I'm there. Well, I can't. My legs kind of splay a little bit, and my hands don't move very much, and I can lift my neck to see where I'm going. But I don't have a lot of sliding around. I don't have a lot of mobility. And so I'm completely dependent on the team that I've got around me when I go surfing. And so I rely on my team. And so that's a really big theme in my book, and a really big message that I want to share is find your team. Okay. And those are going to be the people who always are paying attention to whether, to what's going on with you. They're always going to be the ones who race to you when you need them. Okay. Sometimes you just have to learn to hold your breath until they show up. Okay. Metaphorically, of course.
Yes. No. I got you. Yeah. So see, there you go. There's a sense of humor. Yeah. No, I think that's very true, because this whole concept of community, finding your tribe, right, is so very much important. And you're right. There's going to be gaps and phases in a person's lifetime where they're not going to find that immediately. It's not like, I want a community. Tomorrow I'll have a community, right? Tomorrow I'll have my own tribe. It takes time. And sometimes the least likely person could end up becoming like a node to that network of a tribe or a community, right? So I think it's really amazing. I kind of wanted to shine a bit of light on the Life Rolls On from Virginia Beach. I think it's such a fantastic group. How did you happen upon it? And, and obviously they're still doing a lot of good work, right? To this day. You want to
Sure.
share a little bit about it? Yeah. Because you just
Yeah,
had
I'd be
so much
happy
fun
to.
chapter.
So that was my very first surfing experience, was with
Yeah.
Life Rolls On in Virginia Beach. Life Rolls On is actually a national organization, and they're based in California.
Yeah.
And they have surfing events across the country. And there are little local events, okay, that are the founder comes in sometimes for the events, but it's mostly put on by the locals. And my very first experience on a surfboard was in Virginia Beach, teeny tiny roller, 1 foot, like the bunny hill of waves, if you could call them bunny hill waves. And I have to be really, really honest with you. The most impactful, there were 2 things that totally struck me about that day. Okay. First was the really hot guy who picked me up. Okay. Because they were putting me into a shorty wetsuit and I didn't have the ability to stand. And so this.
Oh, I'd be so embarrassed. Yeah.
Well, it was kind of, and I knew I couldn't stand and he knew I couldn't stand. And he's like,
yeah.
I'm just going to pick you up. Okay. And so he put his arms around me and he's like, Poof, and he stood me up, and like no daylight between us, and they're tugging a swimsuit up my backside, a shorty wetsuit. And I was like, oh, this is bad. I mean, I was single.
Yeah.
Anyway, someone said to me, you know, he's married with 5 kids. I'm like, awesome. That's good. Like, so, and he's still in that community, and I'm not going to embarrass him anymore by naming him, but he knows who he is.
Yeah. Sounds like
and he's a great guy. And that whole community is full of great people.
Yeah.
And being on a surfboard, being back in the water, I hadn't been in the water in dozens and dozens of years. And the ability to be on a surfboard was amazing. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm liking this. Like a little bit of splash, and then you get rolled off and you come up and you're choking on salt water and coughing and, all the stuff, and going, okay, I just got rolled off the surfboard, where's up, and it's kind of the challenge. But I was in like, 2 feet of water. It wasn't like I was going to drown, because I had a bunch of people around me who came and flipped me over and did all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there are tons of surfing stories in that book. Virginia Beach, New Jersey, they're another part of my tribe. I end up surfing with a crew in La Jolla.
Wow.
I surfed with a crew in New York.
Well, you went
actually all over. Well, and I was based in Pittsburgh and Kentucky at the time. So it's not like I was ever really very close. It's like 750 miles each way.
Wow. That's a lot of determination and passion. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I found him because I was looking for something to do after I got a wheelchair. I found them and the Miss Wheelchair America program at the same time.
Miss Wheelchair America program?
I ended up becoming Miss Wheelchair Kentucky.
Wow. Okay. Congratulations. Look at you.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see on the bookshelf, see the yellow people Lego head.
Oh, I see. Yeah. A bit of it.
Yeah, that's where that's where my tiara sits.
Oh my God, that's so amazing. I see so many things, not your cat, but I see so many
Nope.
cool photographs at the back. And
Thanks.
yeah, we're definitely I love to talk about that yeah, because so I think you mentioned that you actually more than take photographs. Yeah, so if you want to share maybe how that came about, because it's very interesting, before moving on to that, I know you're you're pretty much a scientist, engineer, scientist, all realms of it. And in your book, and just sharing a bit here, that's not you before in the beginning, right? That wasn't what you went
Yep.
to school to study for, and it wasn't even your primary interest, right? But because somebody happened about in your life and gave you that planted, I would say planted the seed of thought, right? Which is what these stories are, to empower, inspire, propelled you to continue that and expanded it. And then there you are, more than one different life came about, kind of thing. So I thought that was really cool because you were part of the project of I think developing was it prosthetic arm? You were programming for that? And
So
yeah, you want to
close.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I am
Yeah,
not a scientist or engineer.
that that's okay. So
Thank you for understanding. Yeah.
my dad was a mathematician.
Okay.
And so I grew up in a house very much of facts,
Mm,
right? Numbers and science and facts. Um, and I had the seed planted to do a master's in computer science. So I was like, okay. And I went off and I did a master's in computer science. And I took that degree and I went to Edwards Air Force Base and was an electronic warfare engineer.
what does that role do? If anyone asks, yeah.
Sure. So on military planes, what it does
Yeah.
is it helps get the airplane in and out of hostile territory safely.
Mm. If I may,
That's the role.
if sorry, a TV show comes to mind, and obviously your job is probably maybe not exactly the same, but intensely more complex. But I can't remember. Was it Homeland Security or 24? With there was a girl. She was on a headset. She was always doing the engineering work behind, helping them navigate to all sorts of safety and getting out of like icky situations, stuff like that. Yeah, is that kind of like are you
So
working live as it goes, situations or pre?
no, so I helped program software for the hardware on the airplane. So I
Gotcha.
was never in touch with the crew as they were going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we did software for the B-1 bomber.
That's incredible.
So to get in and out of territory safely. And it was a big important job. And I started becoming more disabled. My disability started progressing more, and I went and got a degree in rehabilitation science and technology. And I went to start a PhD and was working on a project called Third Arm, which used a Barrett Wham arm. Okay. And it's a big, it was in a box and it sat on a table and it was this big giant arm. And my PhD advisor wanted a new and novel way to move this to help people with stroke be able to stabilize things or do different tasks.
Hmm.
So my job was to figure out how to move it. And I ended up taking my sewing background, because I had a sewing background. And I was like, oh, well, what if I make like a sleeve?
Hmm.
And I figured out about conductive fabrics, and I learned about soldering, and I learned about all this cool stuff, and figured out how to make it so that you could actually grab the robotic arm, move it to where you want it to be. And when you let go, it stopped moving.
Oh.
And so the implications of that are, okay, well, what do you do with that? Well, if I want to stabilize a pan
Okay.
to cook, but I only have one arm that works because I've had a stroke, how am I going to stabilize that pan? Because I need to stir the pan with my arm that works. So that was one use of the Third Arm project, was we needed to be able to move the robotic arm where we wanted to, and then to have it not move.
So a question. How does that work? Like, do you slip it onto your arm and it's gonna detect the nerves and then connect with obviously your mind, thoughts to process those movements, or are you using something to control joysticks or something like that? Yeah, how does it work? I'm very, very
So I have a
fascinated.
robotic arm attached to this wheelchair that I'm going to bring in with the controller on my
Okay.
wheelchair, which is a completely different thing. So these aren't related at all, except to show you what a robotic arm could look like. Okay. And so I'm going to put my hand up here, and then I'm going to do this. Up, go up. Okay. So for the project that I did,
Yeah,
do this.
that's your book.
For the this is my book. And so I could drop my book, but let's not do that. So for the project, it would be grabbing the arm,
Okay.
okay, an external robotic arm, and then moving it in the direction that you wanted it to. And then when you let go, it would stay where you put it. That's what this project did. It wasn't anything that you attached to you. It wasn't a sleeve that you wore. It was actually just a thing that I put on a robot and then had programmed to react to what I'd put on the cover to cover it.
So kind of like a slight added support assistance. That's it. You're still
External,
fundamentally
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, I just
It was really cool.
yeah, I really do love science, and I'm very much fascinated by all these innovations and designs and tools that we can utilize to help make life easier no matter what we're doing. Which is why just maybe a little bit off topic. I know there's this whole talk about AI right now, but I feel like we've been AIing it for quite a bit of time already. It's just that we didn't realize it, since the beginning, where whether it's like, hey Siri, hey Google, and please don't turn on. Yeah, all these devices, they are
Right.
AIs very much, right? So it is, I guess, AI. Oh yeah, of course my devices are listening. They're responding right now. So I think so I guess AI is also, I mean, the new versions of AI, right? It's shaping and changing, all the projects that you are currently working on in terms of developing these assistive tools of robotics.
So I'm no longer in that field.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would agree that AI is absolutely shaping our lives.
Yeah.
Right? I have an Alexa. I don't have a Google Home, but shh, don't talk. So I have an
That's
Alexa
friendly.
sitting here. But for me, she's
Yeah.
also a safety device,
100%.
right? Because if I have an issue and someone isn't here, and I live alone, so there are times when I've had things go haywire. I can get her to call anybody in my address book.
That's true.
Because you won't call 911, right? But I was, I've been in situations where I've been like, okay, hey, blah, 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 call this person, and then they've been able to call 911 because I wasn't able to get to my phone, but I absolutely needed help. There wasn't anybody around. And so that's a thing of AI, self-driving cars, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's creating a lot of opportunity for people in the disability community, right? In the disabled community, right? Self-driving cars. Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as they become wheelchair accessible, man, they need to get everywhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Like
But
function.
yeah, I think AI is helping a bunch.
Yeah.
The chat GPT or whatever it's called.
4. Yeah, 4. And then I think 5 is happening in the background, not publicly available yet. But don't quote me. I'm not designing.
Can help people who have difficulties with writing.
Yeah. 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 And
Right. So
yeah,
predictive information, and that's all really good stuff. And I think there are a lot of benefits that we're going to see coming up.
I 100% agree. I think it's also about the utilizing the prompts, right? To be able to prompt these commands to come out of the AI, right? So, but it's very much empowered, inspired by humans, right? That is us control, just like us, controlling that joystick to move that arm, right? So I think
Right.
it's yeah, it's really, really interesting. I do have a question. So for that device for your arm, the robotic arm, like in that realm of innovation, how often does it get upgraded? Like, is there a lot of focus and resources in that area that where it gets funded so that it can continue to keep on upgrading, if that makes sense? Yeah.
So I probably have version 3 of the Canova Jayco arm. I'm sure that there are more versions available. I am in contact with my dealers, so I get firmware updates.
Okay. So it has firmware updates. Okay.
It has firmware, and the firmware gets updated fairly regularly. There's all kinds of, what's cool is that they can connect directly into it and program it. They can check my programming. I have a super fancy van that I drive right now by joystick.
Okay.
That the joystick was built by a group in Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
And when it needs programming or reprogramming, it takes a tablet and an internet connection, and Switzerland can reprogram how my van drives.
Really? Just
Oh,
like
yeah, just like that.
that is, so it's like a remote team working
It's
on your,
absolutely, you just
taking
have to
care of
work
your
out the time. You have to work out the time difference. That's really the biggest challenge, is what time zone are they in.
That's super innovative, and that's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. It's like a live service team to help you with that. So essentially your car, there's no steering wheel, but just a joystick.
So there is a steering wheel, but I
Okay.
can't reach it.
Okay. And then that the joystick itself replaces the steering wheel. And then how about the brakes?
For me,
Yeah.
for me, the joystick controls the steering, the gas, and the brake, all in the same control.
Wow, that's that's yeah, that's a quite an experience. Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very, very different. No, thank you very much for sharing that. And I think just keeping on track with the time and whatnot. It's just this conversation's been so exciting, so interesting. Um I see I wanted to talk a little bit about your photos, your photography, and your, what inspired you and how did you start to, who gave you your first camera, or what did you shoot with? What was your
Um,
first important, significant picture?
oh gosh.
Yeah.
So I've had a camera since I was 10.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I took it off to Girl Scout camp,
Cool.
and I developed I took classes over time. I picked up a camera because I was frustrated that I couldn't capture the world in the way that I wanted with a pen and paper. I couldn't draw the way I wanted. I wanted super accurate, right? Mathematician's daughter. Okay. So accuracy is super important.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I picked up a camera.
Yeah.
And when I was an undergrad at Texas A&M, they had a darkroom in the basement of the student center. So I learned about darkroom, and I learned about black and white photography, and just started honing my skills. And so over time, it wasn't until COVID, so COVID's actually good for something in my life, that I got brave enough to sell them.
Wow.
And to put them out to see. Your friends are your friends, right? Your family, you're like, oh yeah, you're a good photographer. And you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
am I really a good photographer?
Yeah.
Or are you just my family and friends and you feel compelled to tell me that?
Yeah.
Your friends are nice to you. That's why they're your friends.
It's
It
very
feels good.
true. They tell you good things generally.
They
In
generally
parentheses.
tell you good things, right?
Yeah.
And so I started putting my art out into contests, international contests, and they started getting awards.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I call it modern gladiators. I have a black and white photo of wheelchair rugby players sprinting towards the goal, that was displayed in Barcelona
That's amazing. Yeah.
in 2021. And I've been back to that gallery. I'll go back again in December for more photos included in a show. I've had photos in the UK,
Yeah.
Budapest, it's kind of all over the place. But so, and I now shoot from my lap because I can't pick up a camera to my face anymore.
Okay.
My dystrophy has progressed to that spot. Or I use my robotic arm to hold my arm up and shoot. So that's kind of an interesting way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my camera has a remote trigger device that's in my phone.
Yeah.
So technology.
Yeah, exactly. There are definitely a lot
of that.
Yeah.
I don't shoot portraits oh, thank you. I don't shoot portraits so much anymore. I have one photo that made it into a gallery show of a golfer lining up a shot, but he was squatting down. So we were kind of at the same level. I don't shoot portraits because when I shoot out of my lap, that's kind of up people's noses and not flattering to anybody.
Yeah.
The angle, right? So I shoot a lot of really long zoom stuff, a lot of birds, a lot of landscape stuff with a shorter lens. I just kind of wander around, but I'm really interested in form and function. Does something have beautiful form? You know, I have this interesting photo of a hummingbird.
Okay.
Whose wings are straight up, and I captured them straight up, and his tail's completely fanned out. So the form of that is really beautiful.
I can imagine, yeah.
So I have a photo of shapes, right? I have a photo of flamingo's neck and head, the shadow of that being cast onto the back of another flamingo.
That's beautiful, yeah.
So really beautiful. So very much into form, and in the function, I have my modern gladiators, right? I have sport and movement and those kind of things. So those are the two things that really catch my eye, and those two categories are as broad as I want them to be.
That's quite, yeah, I can't wait. Are you publishing a book of your photo collections? Yeah.
That's on a back burner. That's on the project list. I do have a website.
Yeah.
For my photos at justforthelove.com.
Justforthelove1word.com. Okay. And not to worry, I will share that. Yeah, with on my Facebook page, so I'll continue to share that.
Thanks.
So I think just no, thank you so much for sharing. I'm very excited, and I look forward to, where is this exhibition? Maybe you can share the details to for others if they happen to be in Spain.
Barcelona.
Yeah.
It's the I'll find the dates for sure. It's the second week in December.
Yeah.
So like mid-December to the end. At the Photo Nostrum Gallery in Barcelona.
Okay, yeah. That sounds very exciting. Yeah, Photo Nostrum Gallery in Barcelona, the second week of December. Checking that out. So I think just in tying things up and being mindful of time, what I really wanted to share with others as well, and I'm chatting with you, is how do we help others, if we see someone possibly going through a similar experience, and how are we able to see and detect, and what do we do?
That's a great question. The thing that I found during the progression is I was so early on, I was so embarrassed to ask for help. My friends made it very easy for me. They knew I couldn't bring my groceries in. And so I would say, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Do you have time? And they'd say, sure, we got time. And they would get my groceries out of the car and put them away from me. And so it was very small acts. And it's still difficult sometimes to ask for things like, oh, my van's broken. I need a specialized vehicle. My fiance said, we'll just rent a van and go. And I'm like, that's a lot of money. And he's like, but I want to go places. Right? And so it's but it doesn't always have to be big and expensive, right? It can be as simple as, I see that you're struggling and I know that this is hard for you. Hey, can I get us lunch? Right? So maybe it's financial, and maybe it's just, rather than us cooking, or rather than you cooking for me, how about I cook for you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Small. It can be really, really small. Say the challenge is to not try to mind read.
Yeah,
Right? If you're
exactly.
struggling, don't expect your friends to mind read. If you're someone who has a friend who's struggling, don't expect them to mind read that you want to help them. Offer your help.
Yeah.
Be available. And it makes all the difference in the world.
And it's okay to share that you're available, and it's okay to ask somebody, how do I help? Because sometimes we don't. And then so that it's communication, right? And then the other person, with time and space, they come to a point where they said, okay, this is how I want to be helped, or this is what I need, right? Because sometimes
Right.
a person needs time to come to awareness of what they also need, right?
It's an accepting of it. I mean, accepting a progressive disease is really tough, right? It's tough. Let me just tell you, it's tough. One of the least helpful questions I've ever been asked, or the things I've ever been said, is someone's like, just call me if you need anything. Just call, I'm available. Well, I need 800 things a day. Which one might you be up for helping me with? So if you're able to help with something really specific, that would have been more helpful to me. Hey, I'm going to the grocery, do you have a list of things you'd like me to pick up? Hey, and little things like the socialization gets really tough. My world got really small early when I was having problems walking and hadn't accepted a wheelchair yet. And so when you see your friends who are physically struggling, remembering to include them will help everybody, because people with disabilities have a lot to share, right?
Oh yeah.
Visible, invisible,
Yeah.
and it's just a matter of awareness.
Yeah. And then I think, yeah, awareness, respect, and having empathy, and really just thinking ahead, generally as human beings for one another, right? So, and sometimes they can also be unspoken, even though communication is key. Communication can come also in the form of unspoken actions, right? So just the fact, like that you were giving an example, like somebody going to the grocery stores getting, because I know Heather, so hey Heather, what would you like? And you'll be like, these are the things. Okay. I know that, because I'm helping Heather, I'm going to bring it to her and then probably spend some time, hang out with her, and then, maybe put it away for her, that type of thing. Right. And it's just part of the whole situation rather than, hey, can you help me? Which is totally okay too. Sometimes, some people may not be fully aware because they don't know the situation too much in depth, or simply are just afraid to not knowing what to ask or how to help, right? And not being afraid to say that they don't know, right? So yeah, just coming from all.
Right. It's all of those things.
Yeah.
Right.
So no, that's so amazing and so beautiful, so courageous. You're such a courageous person, and I'm very much honored to have you here today on Her Stories Untold Live Talks with Traei, and it's such an honor. This just over almost 1.5 hours together. What a
Oh, goodness.
went together too. So for sure, if I do head up to Spain, Barcelona this December, I'd be humbled to see all your beautiful photos because I love photography. Um, I love taking things. I don't like to take portraits of people. Maybe like a scene. There's some people in it, but I love taking pictures of objects, spaces, the use of space. Yeah, that's important. Or like the angles and stuff like that down. So those things fascinate me. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Heather, for your time today. And I want to thank
Thank
you,
you.
writing your book, Rough Waters. It's in the website link that I have shared with everybody. So if everybody goes to check out the website, you can find more details about Heather, more details about her book and what she's currently working on and what's happening. So I want to thank you again, Heather.
Thank you, Traei. I've really enjoyed our time today. It has flown by.
Yeah, it definitely has flown by. It was such an easy conversation, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you for inspiring so many of us. Yeah, so
Thank you.
thank you. So I will be wrapping up our talk today, and please take care. Have a fantastic weekend and a super powerful week ahead.
Thanks, you too.
Bye for now. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.